Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next part of LEDs. You've seen photographs of the different types and possibly their sizes, which may not mean much to people as they see them. This is a little box I've made up a number of years ago to demonstrate LEDs. Now I shall press the first button and you see 3 lights. These are mounted on the reverse side of a piece of circuit board and they shine through the hole. The sort of thing you do in a passenger car or even a building, but buildings can be a different thing, so we'll come to them later. The next one, you see 2 bright white and on the end on its own a red, the red 603. You'll hear me mention 603 regularly because it's the most common size you need on model railways. You can use bigger, you can use smaller, but the 603 is a good all-round size. Now that is a 402. They got 1K resistor for each of those buttons. They're in series. You can see there is an LED, there's a resistor, there's another LED, there's the other one. And they're running off a 9-volt battery, which is in the box, makes it nice and handy to walk around with. And the last one is actually on edge, so we'll tip it up so you can see it. It's a pair of fiber optics. One's broken off. One there, one there. LEDs on the back side on a piece of circuit board. A piece of white styrene that simulates a tender or the back of a coach which needs lights on the back end. That sort of thing. We'll get to those later. But we press the button and you can see the lights shine through. They're in series and yep, a 1K resistor. That's what LEDs look like when they're finished, but how do we get to that stage? I buy mine in a packet. They come on a roll. This was a roll of 1,000. We're possibly down to the last 200 on there, and we'll take you back a bit to see things. And as the label says, it's warm white. The little yellow piece right in the middle there is the LED, and we shall solder wires to that. It's not as hairy as it sounds, but it can be fun. A slightly larger LED, these are the next size up. These would be the 805s and they're pre-wired with a red and black wire. You can buy them like this, that's okay. These would be about $25 for 10. The way I buy my LEDs, I get them, there's 1,000 warm white LEDs, and that's just over $5. Free postage from Australia. You don't have to get those from China. You can get these, and you can see the size of them compared to my finger, so you know, they're white and they're warm white. It's a slight difference, and they've got 6-inch leads on them. Right, nice big fat chunky ones. You can put in one space, it'll light up a fairly large space. Now, here's my warm whites. The ones I've just shown you with leads, you can also get them without leads and solder them on to yourself. But you don't always have to solder them to leads. You can solder them to circuit board, as I did on the little demo board. Yeah, you can solder them to circuit board, much easier than leads, and it could be used in many places. And you can add the resistor lead, your leads, Here's 2 rolls of magnet wire. Magnet wire is 4 thou, and it's like a hair, but it's very strong. There we go. You might see it shining as I whip it back and forth. So that comes in green and red. Obviously red would be positive, green would go the other side. I can't remember how much is on a roll. I've used up 1 roll in the past 20 years, and both these I've got from deceased estates. You see them there in the junk pile at the deceased estate. Yeah, I'll have them. It costs you about $12–13 in Australia to buy a twin roll, and it's the stuff you would use more than anything else. And once you start using it, it's okay. A lot of people get a knife. Where's my knife? There's my knife. There's my knife. And we turn the overheads back on. There we go. And you can see it laying there like a little snake in the grass. A lot of people will get and they scrape. You can see I just made that end bit shiny. I can't see it on the camera, unfortunately. Now, it's not going to show up for you, it's too small. You can do it that way, it's a bit hit and miss. The best way is use a soldering iron, temperature controlled iron, set at about 280 degrees. That's centigrade because we're in Australia, and a blob of solder on the end of the iron. Just put that into the blob for about 5 seconds, take it away, and you get a nice thin piece of copper showing at the end of the enameled wire. I will show you that with a soldering iron in a few moments. We just show you the bits that are on the bench here at the moment. The other thing that we need, heat shrink. This is all 0.8 millimeter, and when it goes down, it's down to about 0.4. They come in assorted colors. That's yellow, that's clear, black, is that orange or red? That's red. The orange is very, very similar. Number of different places. If you check the places that use radio control cars, planes, you probably find that they will have it better. And the last piece of something we need is fiber optic for putting through into awkward places with gluing a lead to the other end. I will show you that. And that's not a problem. That's 0.75 millimeter. That's as big as I need for HO. We'll put them out the way. And the other source is your lava lamp. You can see I've done quite a bit of stuff off this one, and there's still another, I reckon, about 200 years worth of fiber optics there for me to play with. This was on its way to the tip, and I said, yeah, I'll take it to the tip, but it's still here, unfortunately. And they're about, yeah, $10 at your $2 shops. When working with LEDs, either surface mount or the old-fashioned type, you need a flux. Either of these will do. With the car's flux, you've also got yellow and orange, which is slightly weaker, but the green flux is okay, and the one for Brunel, which is from Brunel Models in Victoria, they will last you a while if used properly. To apply the flux, you need something to apply it, a brush. But you can use a makeup brush, micro brushes as they're called, and they come in different sizes. The colours make a difference what they are, so you just tip it in and apply it to whatever you're going to put it on, and you can use those a few times. So I've got them sat in the rack in front of me, and we put that away before we spill it. So they're important. I don't use any of the paste type fluxes. They're too much like the old plumber's flux, which is too acidy and can do more damage than you want. I'll show you the different sizes of surface mount LEDs. I don't have many of the old-fashioned type LEDs, but this is where they're handy. There's a crossing sign with little plastic bezels, and they're replaced by a pair of LEDs. So, and that's what they look like on the back. Also, the 3mm LEDs will work on the large ground signals. They just push in from the back. Again, nice tight fit, and they go. We just put it on the tester to show you that it works. There we go. Testers, this one Jaycar for $15. The earlier ones were very much the same, except they had a black display instead of a white display. So the preference is yours, and you always check which way around the LEDs work, and there we go. A commonly used LED set in buildings. You've got one resistor and three, and you can chop these off the 5-meter roll. And this one has got a 1.5k resistor in series with 3. If that's still too bright, you can stick another 1k on. Going multiples of 1k makes it very, very easy. You can either take that off and put a different one on, or just put it in series with this when it goes inside your building. Very, very, very effective. A few little tools you need when you're starting to do a bit of soldering. I use a piece of old circuit board. You could use a piece of styrene, whatever you like. Double-sided sticky tape, cut into little squares, and you pull a piece off, and that's where you're going to put your LED for soldering, or resistors, or any small units for soldering. So a decent scalpel or craft knife. I use scalpel blades, the non-sterile ones. They're cheaper, you buy them by the 100, so they get used regularly. And I mentioned circuit board earlier on. There are different types of circuit boards. You can buy sleepers, circuit board sleepers of different sizes. You can get those in a number of the hobby shops, or you can use this Vero board, which has copper tracks on one side, and stop the light shining too much on it. And you can cut this to any size or shape you want. You can use a saw or a Dremel, whatever, to cut it up for mounting things on. And Comes in very, very handy. Again, you can get this in the electronic toy shop at JCar, and they still stock it. And very, very handy. Been using this sort of thing for many years for assorted uses with electronics. I have my soldering iron set up alongside. It's got different types of tips in the end and temperature controlled. This one is set at 278 degrees, which is perfect for playing with leads. About to say a right temperature doing most things in model railways. The important thing is you must always have some way of cleaning the iron while you're working. Well, you can use the wet sponge, but the water will have all different chemicals and other minerals in it and can soon corrode your tip. If you use these things, again available from JCar, you just, so you can see it, you just push it in. It looks like a Brillo pad, but it's brass, and yep, it's nice and clean. You can see a nice clean tip on the iron. You've got to keep the tips clean. We've shown you the wire. I've cut off some lengths of wire, and we got the piece of board. There we shall get some LEDs, some warm whites. They come in the little packet, as I said. You can unroll the packet and drop two off. There's two on the bench, and pick them up and put them face down on the double-sided sticky tape. It's always better if you make them both point the same way. I'll show you a diagram of which way round to point the leads. That's mounted in. You touch the wire on the end of the LED just onto so the silvered bit is on top of the solder, and touch it, and as you can see, it's fixed. And we do the same with the other one, but the other one we'll do slightly differently. We'll come in sideways, so the silver bit is on the solder like so, and while we've got that there, we shall do the same with the I'm using two methods of connecting to this, and I'll show you why when we've done the soldering. Right, we soldered Trying to do this in reverse is not easy. The LED, we'll show you a photograph of the way this is connected. It's much easier. And we've picked it up. So now we catch hold of the end and we roll it between your thumb and your finger. You don't have to be too vicious. And you've got a nice piece. That's okay as it is, and then go to the other end. We take the enamel off the other end. The other one we did slightly differently, and I'll just trim the end tabs off so that we don't need them. And use our spring-loaded tweezers to catch hold of the things in the middle, like so. Pull the leads up. So now we got one that's connected sideways like a ditch light, and one that's connected straight on. Now, as I said, there are I've done two types of connection. I will show photographs, close-up photos of it later. One is done like a ditch light. That's this one. So that's the front of the LED. And this one is done like a lamp, a normal lamp. So the bright part is looking at the end. I guess to stop every so often to answer the phone, so forgive me if I miss a little bit. People often ask why change the lights in diesels to LEDs. Simple. If an LED is in and it's left on for a few hours, the train's parked, won't affect the body. If it's a lamp and it's left on, it gets quite hot, eventually burn out, and you'll start to see the melt and the marks disappear on the top of your diesels or anywhere where it's been installed in anything. So automatically all lamps are changed for LEDs. Now the next step, which is quite straightforward, when I can find the heat shrink, there it is. So we use the clear heat shrink. We chop a little bit off the end. For youngsters, 8mm, 532 if you're an old fella and used to the normal method. We put the LED inside the tube, like so, and it's almost at the end. And because it's heat shrink, soldering iron underneath, just there, turn it, and now we've sealed the LED inside the heat shrink. If you have brass loco, it's not going to short against the case, and you can use that for marker lights, step lights, ditch lights, all that sort of thing. Now the other one we can use as a headlight. And we use a larger heat shrink to sit around it because our 1/8 won't fit. And just to prove that they work. Put that on the tester. Trying to do this backwards. There we go. So there's our LED. That's on 10 milliamps. That's half brightness. There's full brightness on these side in the other pin. Now that is twice as bright as the first way I showed it, but not many people can see the difference between 10 or 20 milliamps. So that at 10 milliamps will last a lot longer than I will. So there we go. And we put a clear around the top end of there, and you have a headlight. Now that headlight into a casting for a HO, for a steam loco. I'll show you the photo. Will send out a very bright light. You don't need to go brighter. You may, for a steam loco, even tone it down a bit. But because you double the resistance doesn't mean you're going to have the brightness. Okay, with ordinary lamps, if you use a 1.5 volt lamp, 1.5 volts, 1.51, and it's blown. 1.5 constantly, it gets silvered and you lose its brightness. So that's it. The next bit is to add that to something with a resistor. I got some clear tube, put that on. I have to stop the video every so often. I have the train room door open and we get some nice noisy freights go through. And that one went through with at least 3 locos on the front. When there's 5, they're noisy. So that's why you'll get gaps in this video. Okay, we've now done that, and we need to put a resistor. We have 2 sizes of circuit board. They're both standard width for HO, but as you can see, the thickness is different depending on what space you've got. So in this case I'll use the thicker one, it's easier for me to manage on a video. And we need to clean it because we don't know how long it's been sat around, so give it a bit of a clean. Same the other side. And we're going to mount this on the inside of the smoke box door for the headlight. So we need to cut 2 little slots, and we'll put that on there so we don't cut through the mat. If you're an expert with a Dremel, you can do this with a Dremel. 1, 2, there we go, we got 2 cuts in there, nice. We'll chop it to the length we want and use our little board to hold it while we solder bits to it. So the next thing we want is a resistor. You can tell the values of these resistors, you don't have to know color codes and variations. You just look at the writing on the top and that one says 102, which means 1, 0, and 2 zeros. That's 1000 ohms, so that's 1K. So before we put it on, there, as I said, this is when you use your flux. Makes things so much easier. There's a video on YouTube of a gentleman soldering a loco kit together, brass and white metal, and he's done so many, he's been doing it so long, the ends of his fingers are black where they're burnt and he can't feel anything through the tips. So don't do it for too long. There we go, we put that on there, and we'll zoom it in a little bit for you. There we go. We want soldering iron, clean it. We want some solder. There's our solder. On the soldering iron, a little bit on the end. Tweezers just on the resistor to hold it in place. Touch one end, touch the other end, and the wire we're not using at the other end. This will be mounted on the inside of the smoke box if it's a headlight, and we take our I've taken the enamel off the ends already. Nothing worse than sitting there watching someone soldering. So we go green one on the resistor, red one on the pad on its own. Function wire is going to go to that end, and this end I'm not at my normal workbench. This is my other little LED tester. Soldered a pair of wires onto 2 of the pins. So now I can catch hold of the blue and put it on the red wire, and we take the function wire, put it on the other end, and there's our that. We can mount that on the front of the smoke box. I'll show you that one for the ARM 38 diesel, one of the ones I've done, and you see it's mounted on the inside and not going to get hammed in there at all. So that's that. The other one is a ditch light configuration, and we'll do another one. We'll do a third one and show you how we glue it to the end of a fiber optic. Now, I just wired this one up, and catch hold of it with the spring-loaded tweezers. They're magic. If you haven't got a pair, you've got to get a pair. And we just twist the end bit just a little. Now, what we can do with this, if we're going to put it, it could be the marker lights on the front of a loco, or class lights if you're an American. We get a little bit of chop the end so it's nice and smooth. Now we can put a bit of super glue on the end of that and attach attach the LED. Just on there like that. That's fairly easy to do, but you've got two ditch lights or two marker lights on the front, so you need two of those. And what you can do is we chop another piece off to show you, because I'm a lazy modeler. If there's an easy way of doing something, that's the way I do it. Okay, so now we have our two front lights, normally longer than this, and put the two ends together, and we had super glue. Now super glue comes in all sorts. The only one I use is Loctite Professional from Bunnings. They haven't got it on the shelf. Tell them to get it on, because they advertise it in all branches. Once you glue with this, you need a chainsaw to get things apart again. So it's not like a lot of super glues which last as long as a cat doesn't sneeze in the room. So these microfibers, micro brushes, dip a drop in, and we use that on the end, and depending how firm your hands are, you hold the LED on the end. Well, I'm not going to sit here for 5 minutes and hold this for your benefit, so we get a piece of heat shrink, put that over the tube, put the correct LED in the end of the heat shrink, like so. Whoops. I'm trying to do this upside down so you can see what I'm doing, so you must forgive me. We put the red in one side, and we put the green in the other side, and you can see we now have two. We're down too low, we've moved. There you go. We have two lights at the end of the fiber optic, and if I find my other tweezers, I'll just hold the base of it, and you can see it's bright down the bottom. That's to show you that the light is in there and it's shining up through there. And get the super glue out the way, and then what we do next is get a little bit of there you go. We put the back heat shrink down around the bottom part where the lamp is. These can be 2 or 3 inches long going through the boiler. You find this sort of thing is handy if you're doing a 38, when the plastic streamline 38s come out. I don't know if the nose cone will come off or not. If not, you can put these into the marker lights, run it back down the boiler, and mount a little LED at one side, and that's getting your marker lights. You've got your resistor on your circuit board, and we'll just show you a few other things just to give you some ideas. A nice little building kit, a laser kit from On-Track Models down in Victoria. John Hunter and Laurie Green. And it looks nice, but if we add a little bit of light to it with LEDs, we got some interior lights, and if I tip this up, you'll see a strip of lights on the inside of the balcony, and at one end, that end, we have a little outside light. That is a piece of insulation off a decoder wire. The wires that we have, can't pick it up, we place those wires and we thread them through, so there's a bit at the end, bend it to shape and just rub it with a bit of super glue and it'll hold its shape. If you want to, you can get brass tube and push it through the brass tube and do it that way. As I said, I'm a lazy modeler, so I'll do the easy way. But that's how you bring a building to life with just a few lights. There's a couple on the inside. We take the lid off. That's boxed in there, which gives you the 2 bedroom lights at the end. There's no lights underneath, just a little bit of circuit board, a resistor, and we go to the other lights which are down the front. So something simple like that. Doesn't take long to do, but it can make a big change to a model. So we shove the roof back on. Put it the right way around. As I say, I keep doing things backwards here. So that's it. We even take the power out, and it does take a while for the lights to go out. So I'll show you a few other little things. Now, bigger resistors, which I don't have many of here, I don't think. There's one. These are your normal resistors. That one, I filed the top down flat for some reason or other, for whatever it was used for. They come in all shapes and sizes, and if you look at them, the transparent ones, and most of them are these days, you can see there's a small metal contact on one side, or metal part on one side, and the other one is much bigger. Well, the little one's the positive one, and that is opposite the flat, which is the cathode, and that's the negative side. Many people in the early days, there's one as is, the long lead is the positive and the short lead is the negative, or function wire in case of decoders. Now, you were always told, oh, always connect the resistor to the positive. So if you have one positive terminal and 7 lights, you go 7 resistors all hanging off. Messy. It's always easier to kind of pull all the positives together and put the resistor on the negative side. It will make no difference whatsoever electrically which side you put it on, but it's just tidier and easier to do it the one way. Always put the resistor on the function. In a lot of brass locos, you can connect the long one, the positive, to the frame. So it picks up off one side of the rail. It doesn't matter which side. The resistor's on the other, and will go back to the decoder. So your decoder is protected. If this blows, shorts, or someone breaks it, which does happen, because it's connected to ground, it's not going to cause a problem. So I know that comment will upset some people, but yeah, I've been playing with all these LEDs for a few years. I've been in this country now for 50 years, and for at least 5 to 10 years before I came here, I was using LEDs in my job. So I've got a little bit of experience, and anyone that tells you you have to do something one way, always double check, because when they get very, very positive about something, it means they're not 100% sure themselves anyway. That's just what they've been told. So we'll now show you a few other little items we have around with LEDs. As I mentioned before, a number of ways you can use the light. This uses a brass tube. It uses the Campbell shade, which is a brass shade, which you solder to that. Run your wires through the middle, and you solder. You drop a bit of super glue in there just to keep it away from the brass, so it's not going to touch anything. The resistor's down the back here, and when I get my tweezers, that's the red, that's a bright white, that's not a warm white, but you can see the effect outside of industrial buildings, large buildings. And not to be outdone, we have a brass tube. Put it the right way around. And there's using the different shade with the lamp inside and a brass tube for your upright in the yard. So, and here we have more LEDs. These are 2mm LEDs, which you would have seen on the photograph at the beginning. They're mounted in the head, and the wires come down and out through there. That's the wire. Buildings, as I mentioned earlier, you can buy a strip. Depending on where you buy them, you can get a 5 meter strip of LEDs for $5, or you can get 18 inches for $30. Just depends on where you buy them. I'm quiet, there's the XPT on its way to Brisbane. So they've got a nice 24-hour trip to get there. And you take those strips, and depending on how many buildings and how big your buildings, you just chop off a small bit. They're already mounted. They have a double-sided sticky tape on the back, and they're marked positive and negative on the end, 12 volts, and they will give you some light. So don't know if this will work. No, not enough oomph, because they're in series. Some of these lights, that's a different one. That you can see they've got a single resistor per lamp. Some of them a single resistor with 3 lamps on each of those sections. I've got both. I use them on the layout, I use them in buildings. Here we have a caboose, and there's a red LED pushed into them, the little lamps on the side. On the more modern caboose, they'd be on the end of the car. There's the caboose on the end with the lamp on the end. Now